Hi, it's Rosa Collado with Keller William, and I'm so excited because I have Stefano here again. A lot of people are requesting for you to come here, so I appreciate again your time to come. There's so many changes that are happening now. So first of all, thank you again for coming in. And I wanted to just kind of dive right in because a lot of people know you already, especially ones that being in my channel here. So we want to start jumping into violations, right? Especially those sidewalk violations. So tell us a little bit about sidewalk violations, how you can help the consumer get rid of those sidewalks violations, especially when they're looking to sell their home.
All right, Rosa, first of all, thank you for having me. And as far as sidewalk violations, typically they are issued by DOT, and the reason why they issued is 90% of the time is failure to maintain the sidewalk. So even though the sidewalk is owned by the city, it's the responsibility of the homeowner to maintain them. So whether there are severe cracks, they don't meet code violations. So DOT usually just makes a sweep around the city and issues not violations, but notices that they have to be corrected. They do offer the homeowner for DOT to fix it themselves, but their prices are usually much higher, and the price gets tacked on to your taxes.
Got it. And there's a lot of people that I've worked with. I work with a lot of homeowners, and especially with individuals that are looking to sell their home. Is when this comes up, they start realizing, like, wow, I have a violation. And most of them do get a mail, right, from the city saying you need to fix it. You can hire us or hire someone. So some people do go ahead and hire someone. So, and they get it done, right? I have a lady, for example, that you're helping me with, where she's selling her home. We figured out that she has these violations. And she said, well, I hire someone to come and fix the sidewalk. The sidewalk looks good to me. And you're saying, hey, Rosa, the sidewalk doesn't look good. So tell us a little bit about that. Why did that specific homeowner, or a lot of homeowners that are going to a third party to get it done, why are they not getting it fixed correctly, their sidewalk violations?
Right. So the first thing when you hire someone, they have to be licensed and registered with DOT and allowed to pull permits. So you can't grab three or four guys from Home Depot and fix the sidewalk yourself. It has to meet code requirements, and a permit has to be obtained. So typically the process is, if the violation is issued or the notice to correct it, you come to me, I'll coordinate with the concrete contractor. We'll pull the permit. He'll come in, fix the sidewalk. After the sidewalk is done, then I take over to come over either to satisfy the violation or the notice to correct.
And one of the things too that I'm hearing is that you even told me, hey, they did it incorrectly, because I guess there's some rules that have to be done correctly, right? The measurements has to be accordingly to the way that the city wants. And now we have to destroy that sidewalk and do it once again. So it might cost them more money if they don't reach out to someone like you, where you can kind of walk them through the process and do it the right way.
Right. So once the work is done and at the time of inspection, the sidewalk has to be pristine. So some people will argue, oh yeah, I picked the sidewalk 4 months ago, 5 months ago. But God forbid there's a crack or something in a flag, you don't necessarily have to replace the whole sidewalk, but at least that flag, and you're still spending money. And you still have to hire the contractor and put the permit in.
Now, so what's one red flag for someone that is looking to fix the violation, right? They might have not found you, Stefano, or they want to try to go with someone else. What is it that you recommend to them to say, hey, you know what, be in the lookout if somebody comes into you and say they're going to fix it, and they might actually not get it fixed properly?
First thing is, you got to make sure they're registered with DOT and they obtain a permit. So before they start work, I would recommend the homeowner ask to see the permit.
So first thing is make sure that they show you that permit and show that they actually that they can work for DOT.
Correct.
Great. And now that we are talking a little bit about permits, what's happening now with DOB and pulling out permit compared to, let's say, last year? Are you seeing them moving faster? What are you seeing now that we're somewhat out of the pandemic?
Well, so because of the pandemic, the Department of Buildings implemented a system that's called DOB Now. They were rolling it out before the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, they were rushed to launch it completely. So there were some glitches in the system. They still are. As far as the process, it's faster to get it in filed, but sometimes meeting with the examiners, either by phone, video call, in some instances, you can now see them in person. but you lose that face to face. So before, you used to be able to go down to the Department of Building, sit down with an examiner, and point out. So if he has a question on a plan, I could, oh yeah, it's right here on page 2 or whatever the case is. But doing it virtually is not that. So he'll come back with an objection for something that's already on the plan, and you just waste time going back and forth.
So what I'm hearing from you, what I hear you saying too, is that not only is it taking a little more time if you're not doing it properly. So the best bet is to do it properly the first time around, so you're not going with this back and forth.
Correct. And unfortunately, we can't control what the examiners say or actually see. So it's just about it. We have to know our arguments, hold our stance, and we got to kind of convince the examiner to see things our way.
Now, with permits, what are some permits that you consider that are much easier to get it approved versus others? Like, for example, is there anything, I was just going to say, for example, windows or doors? What is one of the permits here in New York City that are easy to get approved versus others?
Right. So permits are not isolated, like you said, to windows or doors. They're just types of application. There's, a type 3 application, a type 2, a type 1, and a new building application. And it all varies. Typically, type 3s and 2s, which is just general construction, mostly for renovations or fixing. They can be done quickly. There's 2 ways to file them. One is called the professional certification, where the architect takes full responsibility and it never gets reviewed by a DOB examiner. So he's signing it saying it complies with code and zoning and there's nothing wrong with it. Once construction is done, we'll go out to make sure everything was built to plan, and the architect will sign it off. Then there's standard.
I have a question on that. So DOB will not have to come back in and re-inspect the entire home?
Correct.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, and then there's a standard where we submit it to the Department of Buildings and an examiner does review it. So that's lengthy because what I said before, I can go back and forth with the examiner trying to convince them we comply with all code of zoning, or he needs minor changes on the plan. So you kind of lose days or sometimes weeks that way, depending on the examiner's availability for his next appointment.
Now, I've heard, and I don't know if this is correct or not, that in New York City, you can be your own licensed contractor if you're doing, let's say, a type 2 or type 3.
No, for small projects, sometimes they allow the homeowner to pull the permit under his home insurance, but you need special approval for that.
Got it.
So you just can't assume you can do it as of right.
Got it. Okay. And for that, obviously, they can give you a call, and then you can kind of give them an idea of what they can do on their own, and when do they need to hire someone.
Correct.
All right. Now, with open violations too, right? There's a lot of open violations. I know that you specialize a lot in open violations. So can you tell us a little bit more of what specifically do you do with the open violations? Because there could be open violations in the basement, right? It could be in the attic. So how do you help a homeowner that has open violations and they're looking to get help from you?
Well, the first thing we do is obviously look at the violation and see what it's for. In most cases, we can see what the violation is for on the system. Some of the older violations, we have to go physically to the Department of Building and obtain a hard copy, and then we can determine what needs to be done to resolve it. Sometimes it's just, let's use, a big one is curb cuts, right? A lot of homeowners in Brooklyn and Queens think they could just cut the sidewalk, do a curb cut, and they have a driveway, which you can't, right? You need a permit, and it has to meet building and zoning review. So if you're not allowed to have it, it's as easy as hiring a concrete contractor, pull a permit with DOT, and restore it to a legal sidewalk. If you're allowed to legalize it, then we need to get an architect, file it with the Department of Buildings, have it pass zoning and code review. Once approved, then the contractor can go to DOT with that and obtain the permit.
A lot of people have this mindset that if they have a violation on something that they did on their own, that they can actually legalize it. And that's not right. Even like you just said right now with the sidewalk, right? It all has to do meeting with code. So why would somebody normally get a violation? What is it that would transpire to someone to get a violation in the first place?
Well, typically, most work in New York City, you need a permit for. Even minor work, interior, obviously, a lot of homeowners do it themselves. And don't get caught. The risk is, you always get caught by your neighbors. Uh, your neighbors always complain. Once they complain through 311, the Department of Building does have to go out and inspect. I always tell homeowners, or just don't let them in. They need a warrant kind of to get in, right? They can't just come in. Uh, so don't let them in. Let's look at it and see how we can resolve it. So that's key. And the most important thing is, get the permit before you want to do renovations or any construction. Speak to someone like myself or another professional and guide you, because I've come into instances where homeowners build extensions. They get caught and they're like, okay, let's legalize it, and then to find out they exceeded the FAR, or it's not allowed, and you can't legalize it. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to knock it down and restore it. So you're spending all this money for nothing. So the thing is, before you do any major construction or undertaking, speak to a professional and get the guidance. And just kind of going back with the permits and the contractors, same thing with contractors. Make sure you hire a licensed contractor who's registered with the DOB and able to pull permits. Sometimes, there's a difference between licensed contractors and the ones that are registered with the Department of Buildings. And you need those in order to obtain the permit. You get caught working without a permit, then you're going to have to pay another contractor to pull the permit or take responsibility for the previous contractor's work.
So, is there a website where someone can actually go and see? Because people can say, yes, I am licensed with DOB, because some homeowners don't even know what the difference is, right? With somebody that's a licensed contractor or someone that's licensed with DOT. So who can, is there a website, or how would this?
Yeah, so with the Department of Buildings, you can actually go to NYCBIS, which is New York City Biz, and it's short for, obviously, New York City Biz Information System. And there's a tab there where you can see all licensees, whether they're architects, contractors, fire suppression installers, sprinklers. You put in the company name, the type of contractor they are. So in most cases, it's the general contractor, and they'll let you know if their license is active and their insurances are up to date.
Perfect. And now let's even go over and discuss, let's say those individuals where they went ahead and did the extension on their own, they got caught, and now they're like, hey, I want to legalize. And let's say that they actually can legalize that extension. Would they have to tear everything down, or how does that actually work?
No. So I don't know if you recall, one of the first jobs we worked with in Corona was the same thing. They did an extension. If they're legally allowed to have it, all we have to do is file an application, which is called a legalization, and then we legalize it. But there are fines that are involved, so they will have to pay penalties. And
with those penalties, there's no way for them to get out of that. You have to pay for it because you did it.
Yeah, you have to pay for it. And not only that, but let's just say this extension, you did a kitchen or a bathroom. Even though all the work is done, you have to hire a contractor to pull a permit again, even though no work is done. And then you have to hire a plumber, master plumber, again, registered with the Department of Buildings, to pull that permit and take responsibility for that work and complete sign-offs.
And not everybody's going to want to take responsibility, especially if they didn't do the work either.
Right. Depending on what it is. Sometimes they got to put holes in the walls to check the roughings and the connections of the pipes.
So what I'm hearing here is that the first thing they have to do is, before they start doing any major repairs, to reach out to you or a professional that can kind of walk them through and actually see, can they actually do that or not?
Yeah.
And I have another question now that kind of goes in line with this, is that a lot of individuals, right, where they go look at home, they're home buyers that I go in, they're interested in buying a home, and they're like, oh, I see the next door neighbor, they have this really massive extension. This other next door neighbor also have an extension. Can I also do an extension just as long as that one? So can you tell us a little bit about that? Can somebody actually just do an extension because their next door neighbor had an extension that was done 10, 20 years ago?
No, because, a couple of things come into play. First, the zoning or code might have changed from when that was allowed. First, we would have to see if those extensions are even legal, right? Just because they have them already doesn't mean they're legal. And if they were legal at the time when they were built, maybe the code or zoning has changed compared to that. Because you have to comply with FAR restrictions, and that goes to the footprint of the house compared to the lot size. So there's a lot involved. You can't just assume you can have it.
Right. And a lot of property too over here in New York City, because they didn't have a CFO or certificate of occupancy, a lot of them were grandfathered in. Now
Well,
everything.
but grandfather, that's not something really used anymore. Back in the days, you had that argument, um, but if you have an illegal condition and for whatever reason it exists, you anytime you do anything new to the house, you're gonna have to comply with the new code.
But let's say that you bought a home and it has an extension. It was 20 years ago, the extension was done, but it's illegal. Do you still have to file paperwork for that, or would it be considered grandfathered in already?
Well, technically, you would only fix it if you get a violation. If
Right.
there's no violation, then there's nothing to do.
Got it. Okay. So again, just because somebody has that extension, you're saying you still have to file you still have to apply with code. Zoning also has changed a lot. Is zoning here in New York City, how often does it change, or it really depends?
It varies depending, it's all mostly political, I think, what they want to do. If they want to turn, like with these massive buildings that you are now seeing in Brooklyn, right? Previously, they weren't zoned for these buildings, and now they are. It just goes on what the need of the city is. If you need housing, if you need commercial, and obviously the higher ups, they lobby for zoning changes like these big developers. There's a lot involved in zoning.
Right. And even now, go
I
ahead.
know, and the building code is pretty much just safety, making sure you comply. So the building is structurally sound. You meet egress or handicap restrictions. I mean accessibility, not restrictions. That's what the building code is for. Zoning is pretty much what you're allowed to build and what you're allowed to have.
Got it. So the building code and the zoning are two complete, even though they're kind of together, but they're very much different.
So any new project, you have to comply with both.
Got it. Okay. And I know that now that we were talking about a little bit about politics, even though we weren't talking about politics, but I am hearing there's a lot of articles that are coming out that they are looking to now start legalizing basement apartments. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Are you involved with that? Have you heard about this as well?
No, not yet. I've heard that. I've read an article. The governor wants to start an initiative to do that, but I'm not sure what the requirements are, because obviously you still would have to comply with safety regulations. So typically for a basement, couple of the main things you have to have is a clearance from the ceiling to the floor of 7 feet. You need 2 means of egress. 50% of the basement has to be above the grade, so kind of where the sidewalk is. 50% of that basement be above that. So those are kind of the 3 main things you have to conform with. So I'm not sure what they're going to change, or maybe it's just zoning to allow maybe a 1 family into a 2 family, or 2 family into a 3 family.
And talking about doing conversion from a 1 to a 2 family, or a 2 family to a 3, are you seeing that happening now, where people are converting, and is it easier now, and what you need to do to actually convert?
1 to 2 family, if the basement can be done, I'm definitely seeing that. When you go from 2 to a 3, it's a little more difficult, because now you have to install sprinklers in the house, and that's a big expense. So a lot of homeowners are shying away with that. Typically when they want to legalize the basement is to get that extra rent. But if it's going to cost another $20,000-$30,000 to install sprinkler systems, that's a big deterrent for them.
Absolutely. And you're able to help with all that, with determining, can we actually legalize this basement, and now let's convert it into a 3 family.
Right. I pretty much handle all of that except the actual physical work of the construction.
Got it. So you're kind of
right. I'll come in with the architect. We'll do zoning and code and zoning calculations, see what you're allowed to build. We'll help with the design, and to ensure the homeowner's vision of how they want their new home to look, and just make sure it's able to do it. And a big thing I tell them is, because sometimes we get the approved drawings, the permit, and mid-construction they want to change, right? I don't want the kitchen here, I want it over there, or the bathroom. And they build it without telling us, and now that might not comply with code. So then they got to rip it down and and put it to the original location, or if it does comply, we still have to amend the drawings, resubmit to the Department of Buildings, and get the new layout approved, which all increase costs.
So what you're saying is before they're calling you, or even while they're in the process of working with you, is let's really set our goals down. What is it that you want, what you're envisioning, and let's make it happen, versus trying to say, well, you know what, I saw something, my friend has it, now I want to add it here because I'm already spending XYZ money on getting this update in my house. Correct. So you're saying before you do all that, sit down, have your goals together. Now with garages, right? I hear a lot of people that they're doing, they're making living space in their garages, or they're making another roof on their garage. So now you're having 2 floors and really on one level garage. How do you help people with garages and possibly even legalizing their garage?
The same thing, we can convert garages to living spaces, or depending on the size, certain to an apartment. But again, it has to meet zoning and code requirements. It's almost kind of the same scenario when you're trying to legalize a basement. Obviously, because the basement is underground and the garage is above ground, there's different requirements, but it's kind of the same process. It can be done. If you want to make it bigger, then that's where the FAR comes into question, which is the floor area ratio. You only allow a certain amount of square footage per your lot size. So if you increase it, if you go over, then you're not allowed to have it.
Now, would you consider that it's standard all over New York City with regards to the lot sizes, or does it vary, let's say, from Brooklyn and Queens?
No, I mean, typically it's about 25 to 100, but obviously, depend, yes. You've seen lots that are very narrow, corner lots are massive. So obviously the bigger the lot, the more you're allowed to have.
Right.
And one of the key things we were discussing back a few weeks ago was with the rear extension, right? Even if you're allowed it, typically, depending where you are, you have to maintain 30 feet from the rear of the house to the rear lot line. So that's a big one, right?
Right.
If you have a detached house, you have to maintain 5 feet from the side of the house to the lot line. So it all depends.
Right. This was the house that I had called you because one of my clients was interested in buying it in Astoria. Same thing. They saw extension on both sides of the neighbors. They said, hey, it's easy for me to do that extension. And you looked, and it's funny because you actually were able to look with Google Maps and right away determine, hey, this is not going to meet the requirements. So let's not even go there. So
because sometimes it's visually, you could see it right away.
Right. And it could be, like you said, the zoning's changed, especially in Astoria, things are changing. And because that zoning changed, they no longer can do that extension. So with regards to homeowner, let's say a homeowner, right? It's a buyer, they buy this home, they didn't hire a real estate agent like myself and didn't consult and see that there's a lot of violations. So they get tricked saying, hey, you know what? I can buy this house with violations. I'm getting a great deal, right? Or they might even get money in escrow thinking that, hey, the current homeowner is going to fix the violation. But a lot of home buyers, right, first-time home buyers, they think that if they buy a home that has violation, that because the violations was under the name of the past owner, right, that they no longer have to deal with those violations. And that's not the case. So how do you help homeowners with that? Is there a way that they can actually negotiate, possibly lowering those violations and you helping them remove those violations as well?
So a couple of things. Sometimes when you change homeowners, you might be able to fight the fines, but it will not get rid of the violation. So just because you pay the fine or able to remove the fine doesn't mean the violation goes away. You always have to maintain the property up to code. So again, depending what the violation is, we'll come in, determine what needs to be done to fix it, whether it's, filing an application with the DOB, or if it's a DOT matter with DOT, or sometimes it's just a perfect example that doesn't require a permit. There's homes, especially in Queens, that have like the front yard and they maintain like abandoned cars on the property. That's illegal and you could get a fine for that. Now it's easier just removing the car from the front yard. You don't need any special filings for that. So it all on a case-to-case matter.
Right. So let's even discuss, right? Because a lot of people think, okay, I have a violation with DOB because that's where they have most access, and that's what everybody hears about DOB, DOB. They remove the violation with DOB. I mean, we have a client, for example, that you and I worked with together, where she had a violation with DOB. Right. We helped her submit the paperwork that needed to be submitted because it was an illegal basement. They needed to, I think it was called, if I'm not mistaken, it was. They had to do, I forgot how you call it, but they had to get everybody out of it, right? It was like
Vacate order.
a vacate order, right?
Yeah.
Nobody was living there. There was nothing there. It was open. So we took pictures, submitted all the paperwork to DOB. We're like, great, we're ready to close. But then something came up, an ECB violation showed up with the same thing. So can you tell us a little bit about that? A lot of people think if I fix it with DOB, it's automatically fixed with ECB, and that's not the case.
So they're two separate agencies. And the three ways the violation can be done, right? The same violation could be with both agencies, so you have to resolve it with each one. Or sometimes, depending on the severity, DOB just issues the violation, but it never goes to ECB, or vice versa. The violation goes to ECB, but never to DOB. So you always have to check with both agencies to see if they're there, and each have their own way of resolving them.
And most of the violations that we get is normally from DOB, is that right? Or it really varies as well?
Right. So the three major agencies, at least for homeowners of buildings, is DOB, HPD, and DOT.
So HPD, DOT, and DOB.
Yeah.
So the ECB, who handles ECB? Is it HPD from that, or?
No. So again, depending on the severity of the violation, the individual agencies issue it. So whether it be DOB, DOT, or HPD, and then it goes to ECB, because ECB is the one that handles hearings. So that you're allowed to go in front of a judge and dispute your case.
Got it. So ECB is not even its own department. It's more of you going to the judge and kind of defending.
Right. It's a whole separate agency completely, not a department, it's an agency completely.
So can you go over what HPD, DOT, and DOB, kind of what they do and what they stand for?
All right. So the easiest one is DOT, which is either the sidewalk or the roadway, and anything beyond the property line. DOB is typically anything construction related or something contrary to use. So if you have an illegal basement, or you have a first floor and they converted it to commercial space illegally. And HPD is typically with tenants, right? So leaky faucets, no heat, broken doors, doorbells that don't ring, things of that nature.
Wow. So you can get a violation for your doorbell not working?
If the tenants complain, yeah, or mailboxes not operable.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah. So with HPD, about 95% of the time is work that doesn't require permits. So you could get a handyman, to install, the doors correctly, any gates, fix windows, crack windows, the frames, bed bugs, roaches, termites, any kind of pest. You would have to hire someone professional in that area, depending what you're going to do. And then you submit a certification to HPD, pay whatever fines, get an inspection. They'll see everything is fixed, and that's it.
Now, when you're saying that they have to do an inspection, they have to come in and actually look that the work was done properly, or even pictures?
It depends. Sometimes they allow you to certify everything if it was done in a timely manner, or sometimes they'll determine whether they want to come out and do an inspection.
Got it. Okay. Well, I have a last question for you. I do work with a lot of doctors and professionals that are looking to purchase a home. So their thought is, if I can, even from doctors to individuals that want to do a daycare, right? They say, okay, I'm going to buy a one-family house. I'm going to have the first floor where I'm going to use that, or even a two-family. I'm going to use one of the floors just for my business, and then I'm going to live in one of the other floors. How easy it is for someone to actually legalize their first floor to make it a doctor's office, or even make it into a daycare center?
So with doctor's office, it's pretty common. You see that a lot in Queens, where they have it. The process is the same, filing with the Department of Buildings. It varies on a case to case. The main thing is that you comply with the zoning and the code.
Now, with zoning and code, is there like a rule of thumb that somebody can kind of figure it on their own? I know that DOB has a link, and which I'll share with you guys, where you can go in and it gives you the zoning for all of New York City, right? So what would be a zoning? Like I know there's R4, R5, R6.
Right. So a great website to use, and I'm not sure if this is the one you're referring to, is Zola.
Which one is it?
Zola. So you would type NYC Zola, ZOLA.
Got
and
it.
you go to this website. It'll tell you what zone you're in, if there's any commercial overlay, which is key, if you want to do any kind of commercial space, and there's links there that will take you to the Department of Buildings website. You could see a tax map, and it has a lot of useful information.
Oh, this is great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was actually not referring to that, but I'll definitely put the link below. It's NYC.ZOLA.
Right, Google it. Right, Zola. So NYC Zola.
Got it. I'll Google that, and then that will give them an idea of a commercial overlay if they can actually do
right.
that.
So you'll see the zone. Let's just say it's an R1. You can click on it, and it tells you what's permitted in an R1.
Awesome. And even though, I just want to clarify people, right? Even though it says something's permitted, right? Because you told me there's two different departments, because something's permitted there doesn't necessarily mean that you can actually do it, because again, you got to meet measurements. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. Depending what it is, you would have to meet the requirements.
Okay. So again, they got to reach out to you. At least first step is, can you actually do what you're looking to do?
Right.
And if you can, then that's when we reach out to you so that you can say, okay, we might need 5 feet or 10 feet, or, hey, you know what, you're good. You have already enough space to go ahead and do that.
Correct.
Now, when it comes to doing this commercial, is that something that you also help, or is that something that someone can do on their own?
I'm sorry, repeat that question.
When it comes to legalizing, let's say, and making it in a commercial space, your first floor, and saying, okay, I'm going to have a doctor's office there, or a real estate office, or, something for the community there. Is it something that's easy for them to do, or is that something that you also are able to help them with the process?
No, well, they would need us, because we would have to file architectural plans submitted with the Department of Buildings, because when they're going to add, let's say, a medical office, we're changing the use. So there's going to be a change in the C of O. So that's not something they can do on their own.
Right. And one of the things that I like about working with you specifically is that you already have like a team where you have the architect, you have the plumber, you have the electrician, you have everything. And some people, what they do is that they hire different people to do one big job. And that creates a bit of an issue, because not everybody communicates with each other. And it's important for the architect, for the plumber, for the electrician, for everyone to be on the same page. So that's one of the reasons why I'm also recommending you to everyone.
That's key. That's actually one of the main factors where projects are delayed. You're working with someone you're not used to working, so they expect things a certain way, or I expect things a certain way. So like you said, I have a team of architects, contractors, plumbers that I use, that I know are qualified for certain jobs. And if the homeowner goes and decides to work with them, I know what they expect, how they like it. They know what to expect from me, and vice versa. And it just makes the workflow so much easier.
Yeah. I mean, there was an instance that you and I were working in a home in Corona, where the attorney was telling them, I will get this all done for you for $150,000. You came in, you're like, no, Rosa, it's going to cost maybe $50,000. And I think you even got it to
that one I remember. We did it for about $14,000.
$14,000. This guy wanted $150,000.
Yeah, when you told me that price, I was like, that's ridiculous.
Yes. So that's why too. I even have a lady with you that you're working now in the Bronx, where she had an architect. She's like, I want to use my architect and I want to use you. And then she realized that working with you, because you already have this relationship, it makes it so much, it's less expensive for the consumer. And that's why I love using you, because of that.
Well, not only that, because, obviously I respect the client's wishes. When I spoke to her, she was like, oh, I already have an architect. I was like, that's fine. I was like, would you like, I'll have a conference call with him, with you there, to see exactly what responsibilities he does. Because, some architects, they can do the expediting on their own. So I was like, it could be beneficial to her and cheaper if he does it, as opposed to having two separate entities. And she was like, okay, I spoke to him. He was going to kind of do everything, and I was just going to come in to do the violations at the end. And like 2 weeks later, she called me. She was like, he was being unresponsive. He wanted her to go do research on her own and bring him the information. And, she fired him and brought me on board.
Yeah, and I love that you're always up to date with what's going on too. And it's a lot for a homeowner that doesn't know who to talk to, especially now that you can't just go to DOB and ask questions, like you said, and point fingers. That makes it a little bit difficult for a homeowner to go on their own to try to figure this out, where you can get it done, within weeks. It might take someone 6 months or even a year if they make the wrong mistake. Right?
Yeah. So we're very key going back to the homeowner. So the DOB does have like a homeowners night. Every borough has its own night and time. I don't know them by heart.
Tuesdays here in New York.
Tuesdays is Queens, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Queens.
I'm not sure. And that you're allowed to speak to someone. But before, you could go any time of the day and kind of ask questions.
Right. And then they can only give you so much, right? That's the other thing too, is how much can they actually give you also.
Right. And you got to know to speak to the right person, because I've had experience where, I'm at the DOB. This was when it was fully open. And a homeowner asks a certain clerk a question and they give an answer. And I know it's wrong. And that's simply because that clerk doesn't really understand how the appropriate department works.
Right. And the other thing too with DOB that I've myself have found that it's become a little bit difficult is that it seems like not everybody communicates with each other. So you can spend days from one department to the next department and you don't even know where you're going. So the best thing to do is to hire someone that knows what they're doing, that gets educated, that's up to date with what's happening. So I thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that I probably haven't disclosed here or asked you that is really important for someone that either is a first-time home buyer or someone that already owns a home and they're dealing with either violations or opening up permits on their home? Was there something that you recommend or something that we should be added to this?
I mean, obviously the first thing is to kind of vet who you hire, which is key. Another thing is understand the process, right? If we're filing an application with the DOB, make sure whoever you hire is going to close it out. Because I've seen, unfortunately, architects that will file an application, get it approved, give it to the homeowner and say, hey, look, it's approved. But, permits were never pulled or never gets to sign off. And that's another thing, right? Let's say everything is legal and they did the renovations, but they never closed the permit. When you go to sell the home, you have an open permit. And guess what? To close it, now you got to hire an architect again to take responsibility for someone else's work. If there was plumbing involved, you got to hire a plumber. Same thing with the contractor, just to get the paperwork, even though no work is being done. So you're kind of paying for the process all over again.
Absolutely. I mean, I've gone through that a lot where, unfortunately, here, specifically in Queens, it happens a lot where the homeowner doesn't know everything. They're like, well, I have a paper here that says that I got it approved, so I'm good to go. And that not being the case. And like you said, having to go through that entire process. And the good thing too is that, again, you can go to the DOB department. I'm going to make sure to share the link there where you'll be able to see if there's any open permits for your property, see if it's closed and who the attorney was, and kind of get all that resolved.
Right. So one thing to make sure, because, after COVID, so there's two systems now, right? There's the BIZ, which you're very familiar with, and now there's DOB Now.
Yep.
So all the new jobs are being filed through DOB Now. So you always have to look at both websites to see if there's any jobs open. The BIZ will show you all the old jobs, and DOB Now will show you the new ones. Even when that first came out, I felt a mistake with that, because I always forgot to look at the DOB Now, even though it was fairly new, and I always used to just point at the BIZ.
Awesome. So I'll make sure to link both there so people can see it. And now, how can people get a hold of you? How can they contact you?
You can call me. My phone number is 718-938-9522. You can email me, which is my first name, Stefano, Stefano, @nycdgroup.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. This was very helpful. A lot of information was given here. So I'll make sure to put in all the links that you gave to us. And I'm looking forward to our next meeting. Maybe we can even go in, if you're open to, where we can actually go online to NYC Solar and kind of look into it and kind of give people also some ideas of what they can do in the property. So I really would love to do that if you're open one of these days as well.
Actually, 100%. That sounds like a great idea. And one more. You can also follow me on Instagram, which is the NYC expediter. Rosa, if you can, when you get
Yep.
a chance, you can add that in as well.
I'll make sure to have the link there. So can you say it again just to make sure that people can hear it?
The NYC expediter.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much for your time. I'm so looking forward to our next meeting. Have a great day. And guys, you already know if you have any questions about violations, permits, construction, or even if you're thinking about buying or selling a home, make sure you reach out to me and also reach out to Stefano. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you, Rosa. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.